but it will be very problematic in operation.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Further questions? Thank you very much, Mr. Hellier. Did you autograph our book there?
No.
That would be appreciated. Thank you. Anyone else in attendance who wishes to speak in opposition? If you would come forward, please.
Mayor Luke, councillors, thank you for the opportunity.
Okay, if we could just get you lower the microphone, and I know you'll tell us who you are, please.
Okay. My name is Janina Urich. I live at 68 Davis Street West, right beside Davis Creek. We built a new home just 4 years ago, and most windows face south, facing the old railway track, which gives me a wonderful view of the walking, biking trail, which a lot of people use, and the beautiful bridge. Now, prevailing winds come at me in my backyard and from the house. A little paradise, a little slice of heaven, until this proposal reared its ugly head. This proposal would have me looking perhaps at smokestacks, potentially smelling whatever emissions and pollution might come my way, because I'm only about 90 meters or 200 feet away from this proposal. The value of my property and other properties would surely plummet just like a falling star, and from my little slice of heaven. Even the idea of smells, as there's no guarantee possible that would convince me. The smells are psychologically repulsive at that distance of 200 feet. Well, I would welcome the smell of apple pie, perhaps, but we're not talking apple pie. We're talking making bodies a few feet from my home. Councillors, let's learn from past mistakes others have made and from history. Number one, Burlington Crematorium has been causing residents to complain often in the Hamilton Spectator. And what should we learn about this? Well, you can avoid this problem by allowing crematorium far away from people's homes. Let's say 1,000 feet. So maybe Judd's Industrial Park is the place for this facility. Number two, the city of Mississauga passed a bylaw about 3 years ago, and they must have a lot of planners and a lot of experts, and they must have had a valid reason for passing this bylaw. Let's learn from that. Again, Judd's Industrial Park, perfect spot. We need a new Simcoe bylaw to protect our neighborhood taxpayers, our renters, all the people, and even the dogs walking that trail, and my backyard, and other backyards. We don't even want the possibility of breathing in potential carcinogens or chemicals, and you, councillors, can protect us. The trail is a very valuable asset of our town, and we don't want people avoiding it because of this venture. We petitioners are for a new business in Simcoe, and we ask that council reject this proposal. For this business, it's much more appropriate in the Judd Industrial Park or elsewhere, at least 1,000 feet away from people. I have a few signatures on a petition. Who would I give this to?
Thank you. Andrew, our clerk, will
Thank you.
take those for the record. Thank you. Any questions for Mrs. Jurek from council members? Councillor Oliver, please.
Sorry, Mr. Mayor, I promise this will maybe be my last one.
Well, that's okay.
You referenced a bylaw in the city of Mississauga, but you didn't tell us what it was. What bylaw did they pass?
It was
in
about
relation
1,000
to
feet.
a minimum distance of
Minimum
1,000
distance of
feet?
1,000 feet.
Thank you.
Which seems like a good idea to me.
Councillor Brunton, please.
Thank you, Mayor Luke. I'm not sure who provided us again with this document. You did? Okay, I'm sorry.
Okay, well, hold on. If you have a question on the document, that'll have to come later.
Well,
The questions are for this, Mrs. Jurek, please.
yes. Okay, I'll wait and hold these.
Okay.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Brunton. I appreciate that. Councillor Sonnenberg, please.
To the presenter, you suggested you lived within 200 feet of this
Yes,
proposal?
I'm right across the track, right across the walking trail.
How many other residents in the area would you say are in close proximity?
Well, there are people right beside me, right behind me, many.
Could you give me a number?
Oh,
4, 5?
I didn't, more than that. And I would say there are a fair number within that 1,000 feet. It'd be a fair number, I didn't count. Too many to count.
No, not, I'm saying close like you're close, not 1,000 feet.
But there are people right beside me, so we're, 100 feet, 60 feet, 40 feet, depending on the size of the lots.
Okay, so there are
people.
several.
It is a neighborhood, yes,
All right.
there are many.
Thank you.
Further questions? Thank you, Mrs. Jurek. Speaking in opposition, this gentleman, you're next, sir. If you'll sign our book and give us your name when you're ready. You'll need a pen. Just steal one there. They won't miss it.
Oh.
Thank you.
First of all, greetings to members of council and Mr. Chairman and residents of Simcoe. Just doing a little reading, I'll keep this short. There's been strong scientific evidence that crematoriums produce dangerous pollutants which are linked with serious health problems, especially for children. Okay, these pollutants include mercury dioxins, sulfur dioxide, nitrogen oxide, hydrogen chloride, and the most dangerous being mercury. The mercury in the body becomes vaporized into a colorless, odorless gas. Even a new state-of-art facility in Texas have problems filtering the mercury vapors out of the exhaust from the smokestack. Now, this is in Texas, okay? Now, studies done by researchers at the University of Texas found that close proximity to sources of mercury release were associated with increase in learning disabilities, autism, and special education rates. Adults can also develop problems with the brain and nervous system, as well as the lungs, kidneys, and immune system. Not to mention that city tax revenues could decrease because property values of homes and businesses located near the crematorium will go down. Schools will also need more money for special education due to the rise in learning disabilities and autism among children who live near the crematorium. I sincerely hope that the City Council will give the health of its residents top priority and deny the conditional use permit for a crematorium in this location. I would like to see it actually in a remote place somewhere, far away from here. Thank you.
Thank you. Don't run away now. Thank you. Your name, sir?
Gary Dunfermont.
Thank you, Gary. Don't run away. There may be some questions.
Oh, okay.
Yep, that's okay. And there may not be. I don't know. Council members, any questions for Gary? There are none. Thank you very much for your presentation. Anyone else in attendance who wishes to speak in opposition? Go ahead. If you'll sign the register, please.
So I'm Chris Harrop, and I live on 17 Highland Ave, so in the neighborhood. And I'm the one that well, I gave it to Andy, and I didn't think I met the timeline to circulate my letter in the package of no safe exposure. But I submitted that because I had referenced in my letter some information from that document. I think we have to realize that there will be emissions with this crematorium. And so let's not fool ourselves. 50 meters is very close. And so what I'm suggesting is that you consider that would you want a crematorium in your backyard? I wouldn't want to, and I'm thinking I'm 300 meters, if that, from this crematorium. And so the health effects, we don't know. The Ministry of Environment can certainly set controls. I did speak with someone from the Ministry of Environment today, and they won't know what controls until they take a test sample of an emission. They also had said is they will look at how close the residential properties are in terms of this crematorium, but all they'll do is increase those controls. But you can only do so much. You can still have pollution. And so I'm suggesting that we not consider this applicant because our residential properties are way too close, and it will in fact affect my fellow neighbors. The city of Mississauga in 2013 did pass a bylaw preventing, at least allowing some separation from crematoriums to residential lands. And I strongly think that this council should consider that.
Thank you. Questions for Christine, please? Thank you, Christine.
Okay.
I saw a hand back here. Speaking in opposition, you come forward, please.
Mayor, councilors, my name is Steve Supran. I'm a proud owner of 9294 2nd Ave in Simcoe, the rental properties. In the last couple of weeks, I've had a number of calls. Instead of asking what the price of the house is or what the price of the rent is, whereabouts are you located? So you tell them where you're located on 2nd Avenue. Where's the crematorium going to be built? Approximately 1 block away. Anyways, click, there goes the phone. People do not want to live next door to a crematorium. Anyways, another interesting situation is the back of 92 and 94 and also Kowalski 2nd Avenue Printing were designated as hazardous wetland. We're approximately 30 feet up on a hill, and yet the pond, used to be Sutton's Pond, as well as Kent Creek and Patterson Creek, flow in behind the proposed crematorium that Jack's proposing. Anyways, on top of the hill, behind 92, 94, the setback is 20 feet. So if we flood, all downtown Simcoe, including the old Army camp, is going to flood as well. So how can you allow this procedure to go ahead, this building of a crematorium, when you got a creek in behind? There is one other thing. Property values has already been mentioned. I can't see my property values going up. I think they'll be going down. People do not want a crematorium in their neighborhood. And I think a solution to Jack's problem is, if he's any kind of a friend of Kathleen Wynne, maybe Ontario Hydro could turn around and rent him a piece of property. Thank you. Any questions?
Thank you. You have signed our book. Thank you. While he's doing that, are there any questions from council members?
There's lots of parking at Ontario Hydro. Also, it's out in the middle of nowhere. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Supran. Is there anyone else in attendance this evening who wishes to speak in opposition? Anything further, Mr. Bradfield?
As many of you are aware that this is my 5th application to build a crematorium in Norfolk County. I agree with you people that I don't feel it should be within a populated area. First of all, in the city of Nanticoke, I applied and I was refused due to the agriculture zoning. The planner was Louise Harris. Do you remember Louise? Okay. Then I tried to build a crematorium behind Bradfield Monuments, an area that we had reserved for expansion at a later time on Sutton's Pond, and the town of Simcoe sold the entrance to Mather Street to the Minden Manor for $2. I think, Charlie, you may have remembered that. My third request was an 1.5-acre site on the east quarter line of Charlottesville, of which I spent 3 years clearing, and was refused by the planner, Scott Peck, hired by Norfolk County. The use is not permitted in an agriculture zoning. Your sensitive area, it's not permitted. Donnelly Drive south, just south of Jack's Mold, there is an acre site owned by Norfolk County, and I came to this council, and it's abutting Oakwood Cemetery. I was refused by the Community Services Manager, Kevin LaCoche. It was zoned industrial, but the site contained Carolinian trees and must be conserved. I have tried my best to stay out of any populated area, and prior to making this request to Norfolk County, I researched the cemetery's office and found there are more cremations than regular burials. Port Dover, Waterford, and Simcoe all have columbariums to accommodate cremations. Why would you make that kind of choice, put a columbarium in, if you haven't got cremations to go in it? This must show that it would be in Norfolk's opinion or a best interest to have this service locally and available rather than transfer our folks to other areas. As previously stated, this matter, I have researched this matter for over 30 years. Prior to this request, I canvassed the properties adjacent to the former rifle range. It's a shooting gallery. It has 14-inch cement walls and a 10-inch cement ceiling. It's 127 feet long, of which I need 14 feet. And I canvassed Russ Freeman, who is here tonight, of Magnum Tire, Walker Sheet Metal, and Norfolk County Water and Sewer Department. The well at on First Ave is decommissioned, and all your wells are up on the 14th Street. 3 generations have been employers in Norfolk County for 80 years, from our narrow shop on the Queensway. Mr. Hellier mentioned that he wants to see something fancy, similar to the Mount Pleasant Cemetery. I operated for over 80 years on a 28-foot strip in Norfolk County on the Queensway, and we made a comfortable living. I'm not a fancy person. I believe in saving a dollar, and that's why I'm using the facility. So there is a reason for our longevity, and it goes like this. It's better to be small and shine than large and cast a shadow. I believe it is better to repurpose this former shooting range built during World War II than it is to build a new facility. As a businessman for over 43 years, I appreciate a business that attempts to keep their overhead low and reflects in the end pricing. We hope to complete we hope to compete with the beautiful expensive crematorium located in expensive cemetery land, now located adjacent to residential properties. Now, this will be my last attempt to build a crematorium in Norfolk County. And my grandfather, Walter, who was an elocutionist, was a great man to learn poetry. And he passed this on to me. And it goes similar to this. An old man going a lone highway came in the evening, cold and gray, to a chasm vast and wide and steep, with water rolling cold and deep. The old man crossed in the twilight dim. The sullen stream held no fears for him, but he stopped when safe on the other side and built a bridge to span the tide. Old man, said a fellow pilgrim near, you're wasting your strength with building here. Your journey will end with the ending day. Why built you this bridge at eventide? The builder lifted his old gray head. In the path I have come, he said, there followeth me today a youth, whose feet must also pass this way. This chasm that was not to me, to that fair-haired youth, a pitfall be. Good friend, I'm building this bridge for him. Now, I'm 70 years old. I've put up with this nonsense for over 30 years from Norfolk County. I've tried my best to locate in the areas that are agreeable to Norfolk County, agreeable to the cemetery, agreeable to everybody else, and it hasn't worked. I located this site in the industrial mall, in a used rifle range. I didn't know that Mr. Hellier was 996 feet away from the door of this crematorium, or this other lady, where was she? Was 1,182 feet from, well, I lived on Spruce Street, but that roughly shows you. Now, Mr. Hellier has mentioned this derelict equipment that comes out of Mount Pleasant Cemetery. I have a quotation here of $176,000 for a retort, or 130,000 Canadian, plus another 51,000 for the emissions control. I'm also willing to furnish the Ministry of the Environment address and phone numbers to you if you would like to research that further. I would like you to read this, if you have not, which is a crematorium that is built in Strathroy.
Mr. Bradfield, I have to interrupt. Your questions are valid, but you're speaking to me, not to the audience, please. And your questions are valid, but through me, please.
There is a crematorium that is built in Strathroy on industrial land, of which the Denning brothers are participants in this. I handed that out to people. You have this folder, which is the monitor, and if you wish to contact the licensing officer of the bereavement authority, I have the address right handy for you. That's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Anything further from council members? Any further questions? Seeing none, you can be seated, Mr. Bradfield. Thank you. That microphone. Thank you, Councillor Wright. Councillor Brunton, any other questions? Yes, you may. Yes, a question. We're still in question, and then we'll close the public meeting. Question to staff is in order. Yes.
Thank you, Mayor. My question through you to staff is very simple. I read in the report. I realize it's zoned, and according to our zoning bylaws, adequate up there. Correct? But when I read through some of the documents, and I must say we've been given quite a few by different parties here, and it's hard to digest everything, but it says in here that, and I go back to the, I guess it's the city of Mississauga and Toronto area, where they've taken upon themselves to enhance their zoning bylaw with different distances and so forth from, they call it not so much residential areas, but receptive areas. Is our bylaw, zoning bylaw, in any way cover any of these? Is there a definition in there for a crematorium?
Through you, Mr. Mayor. Those are good questions, Councillor Brunton. Crematoriums are permitted in different zones within Norfolk County's zoning bylaw. One of them is the general industrial zone, which 7 Upper Wellington exists. There are no setback requirements for a crematorium in that specific zone. In other zones in Norfolk County zoning bylaw, there are distances that are as of right in the zone. I believe other industrial and commercial zones are in the range of about 600 meters. Don't quote me on that, but there is definitely a buffer zone. For whatever reason, previous zoning bylaws have not for the MG zone, and that's rolled forward. It's not to say that our zoning bylaw could not have that buffer zone in this zone, but it currently does not right now.
So it's strictly just a zoning approval that, or sorry, a zoning requirement that they have met, nothing else right now.
Right now, the property is designated industrial business park, and it's zoned general industrial, which allows the use of a crematorium with no buffer.
Thank you.
Any other questions? I can't. This is just for council. I'm asking for a mover and a seconder to close this public meeting. Councillor Wells has moved. Councillor Hyde has seconded that we close this public meeting. Discussion? Those in favor? Carried. Thank you. Open for direction and discussion from council. Councillor Black.
Mayor Luke, I am ready to put a motion on the floor.
That's in order.
And the motion would refuse the request of Mr. Bradfield and the location as proposed on Wellington Street. And could I speak to it if I get a seconder?
Just a second here. Is there a seconder to this motion? Councillor Geisens, and just before, have you speak the term not supported of this? This is not an application. This is a proposal and for permission. So if you're okay, that your motion could be that the request be not supported. Is that fair?
Same thing, yeah.
Rather than refusal? Okay,
Yep.
Same thing. Mover, seconder, yes. Speakers, please, to the motion.
Okay, thank you, Mayor Luke. And I know Mr. Bradfield has tried to locate one of these crematoriums in Norfolk County before, and he did make reference to the agricultural area. And I think at that time it was a planning application to amend the zoning. And I believe at that time I actually supported it, because I thought that that was the most appropriate place to be. Now we move fast forward to this location, and I have to tell you that like everyone around here, it's very confusing because it's not normal. I'm used to a planning situation where we have a staff report, we have mapping, locations, distances, we have the pros, the cons, we have the expert opinions, we have the engineers, all in a planning report. In this case, I'm asked, and my fellow colleagues are asked to approve something, and I don't have the benefit of any of that expert information. So what did I have to do? Probably the same as everyone else. I received phone calls and emails. I went on the website myself. I spoke to other crematoriums. I made phone calls and inquiries. And, you know, I got a mixed bag of information. And I guess my biggest concern is, and somebody mentioned it here tonight, would I like to live next to one of these? The answer, no, I would not. And whether or not the emissions are non-destructive or if they're safe, I guess, you know, it's the thought of living next to one of these. I think it would bother me, and I think it would bother a lot of people, just the thought of it. Is there a need? Yeah, I believe that there is a need, but there is a better location, and I did support another location in the past. I wish if we had a complete report, it would have been by the Ministry of the Environment or some sort of agency that deals with cremations or the act itself or somebody there that could have given us better information and assured us that it was either the right location or not the right location. But I do have my iPad, despite the fact that we didn't have any mapping. I could follow. I can see everybody's residence on this iPad, and they are very close. It's close to the water, close to the trails, close to many, many residences in that area. I just don't think it's appropriate, and that's why I placed the motion. I do wish Mr. Bradfield all the best, even though he may have said that this is his last kick at the can.
Any further discussion? Councillor Geisens, please.
Thank you, Mayor Luke. I guess I have to go with my conscience here, and having a look at where we're talking about here, I'm afraid I can't support it. I'm sure that there are other locations where there's less conflict or anything like that, and I don't think in a residential area that a crematorium is actually something that I want to see. And I think in the end, this will probably somewhere end up in the municipal board, and they may make the final decision. And it may not be our decision, but it will be somebody else's. Thank you.
Further discussion, Councillor Columbus.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just the last bit ago here, while the deputations were going on, I happened to Google on my iPhone the Nutrient Management Act 2002 by the Ontario government, disposal of dead farm animals, Regulation 106/09. It's interesting. It indicated under this regulation that farmers that dispose of farm animals have to require a primary and secondary chamber vessel. The temperatures have to reach 1,000 degrees Celsius to burn these farm animals up. And I'm sure there's some around in our Norfolk County. And what was most interesting is they have to be 656 feet or 200 meters from the lot line of a residential area. And then it also talks about being 100 meters from the lot line of an industrial or parkland use area. Seems like there's stricter rules out there than in the urban area.
Further comments? Councillor Brunton, please.
Thank you, Mayor Luke. I must say I'm a bit confused with all this separation data. We have a raft of paper in front of us here, and some unfortunately shows up on our desk 10 minutes before we start the meeting, and I guess we have to accept that if people haven't had time to research and bring their information in. But I'm going to give you some information that I was involved with a few years back, and I had the privilege, I wouldn't say it's a privilege, an unfortunate case where I had to visit 4 of these crematoriums to look at the process. At the time, we were looking at establishing a crematorium and the niches that were involved in this community in our cemeteries now. And we were looking very seriously at it. We visited London, Waterloo, where they were located right in a cemetery. We also took a visit to the one in, I think it's called Bayview, is it, down by Burlington, or in that area? And I must say, it's a pretty simple process what they do, but having visited all those locations, I must say I don't think this location is appropriate for that type of business. I don't know anything about this new technology that he refers to in all the information he has provided to us, but most of the ones that I had the experience with were a simple gas operation, and they did have emissions that were very visible at the time, and we watched the process from start to finish. So again, I do sympathize with Mr. Bradfield. He's done a lot of work on this, but I just cannot support the location. So I'll leave it at that. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Sonnenberg.
Mr. Mayor, I too will not be supporting this application. To me, it's too close to the residents. And Mr. Bradfield has quoted prices for his new equipment in the hundreds of thousands of dollars, apparently. I would suggest that if he's got that much money behind him, he should go buy a lot in the industrial zone, which is going at bargain basement prices these days, and he could build a small facility for the price that it would take to renovate this archaic building that he's looking at. I don't want to tell Mr. Bradfield how to run his business. However, there are better alternatives, location and a new structure, and stay away from residents. Thank you.
Any further speakers? Been moved by Councillor Black and seconded by Councillor Geisens that the proposal for the installation of a new crematorium at 7 Upper Wellington Street, Simcoe, roll number 3310-401-001-26420 be not supported, as the proposal is not in the general public interest. Further discussion. Call the question. Those in favor of this motion? Those opposed? Motion is carried. I suspect that there will be members of the audience that don't wish to stay any longer and listen to our wise words. I'm going to call just a 2-minute stretch here, and then we'll get on with our next planning application. Okay, I have a quorum. I'm going to continue the public meeting. I'd like to now deal with staff report DCS 1724. I am on page 66 of our hard copy agenda. This is a Norfolk County official plan amendment to create criteria for pre-consultation guidelines and complete application policies. I will now open the public meeting on staff report DCS 17-24. Shannon Van Dalen is on board and ready to give the report. Thank you very much.
Good afternoon, Mr. Mayor, members in council, staff, and public. This public meeting is with respect to an amendment to the official plan to formalize and establish a policy framework within the Norfolk County official plan relating to pre-consultation meetings and complete applications. The amendment has been structured in two parts. There's two bylaws, one relating to the pre-consultation meetings and the second for complete applications. It is noted that the amendments were originally anticipated for a public meeting in January. However, staff deferred from the agenda to undertake additional consultation with the development community. The pre-consultation portion has been utilized since 2014 with success in discussing major development applications, including official plan amendments, zoning bylaw amendments, plans of subdivision, and site plans, and has resulted in a reduction in the amount of resubmissions and review time for proposals, and has provided for open communication with the development community and streamlining the process. Pre-consultation meetings include the proponent as well as representatives from various county departments and key agencies. The pre-consultation meetings are not required for routine zoning applications or consent or committee of adjustment applications, including consents and minor variances. The complete application policies are intended to complement the pre-consultation process and outline the basics needed for a development application and identify what an application needs and portions to be filled out in supporting material. The information is considered key to the development process to understand the intent of the proposal and allow staff to make a professional recommendation for council's deliberation and ultimate decision. The proposed amendment was circulated to the development community via the Development Information Session Group. From that circulation, we did receive some feedback and email correspondence as well as telephone conversations. From those correspondence, planning staff, we had some individual meetings and discussions occurring with some of our local consultants, engineers, and solicitors. Through those discussions, a number of changes were made to the proposed amendment for the policies, and planning staff feel that the meetings continue to open the dialogue between staff and the development community and helped build some general consensus and understanding towards the amendment. While staff note that it is noted that there are some representatives here from our local development community to speak to the amendment, I would also like to just take a moment to read two letters from some of our consultants that were not available to be here tonight, and copies of these letters have been provided to council and clerk as well. The first one is from Mr. Michael Higgins, planner with the Valley Group, who noted that I have reviewed the proposed official plan amendment to place policies pertaining to pre-consultation meetings and complete applications as part of the county policy document. The list that was in the first draft has been removed and the mandatory wording has been removed. This is an improvement. The amendment requires that a pre-consultation meeting be held for any application that has been identified where pre-consultation would be beneficial in addressing any issues or concerns prior to the formal submission of the planning application. There is also wording in the amendment that would allow the manager of community planning to exempt a proposal from having a pre-consultation meeting. This is an improvement. The amendment further requires that certain applications will require a planning justification. The amendment, in my opinion, is the county formalizing the existing system that is presently being used. The second letter is via email from Mr. John Arians. He's a planner with the IBI group. So he has indicated that as planners, we are all in favor of expediting the municipal review and approval process. The best way to ensure that gets accomplished is for both sides, public and private, to fully understand what is required and what the issues and concerns are likely to be. For that reason, the formal consultation process is considered a very important first step and an integral beginning to any Planning Act application. The formal consultation process allows the applicant to essentially test the temperature of the pool before jumping in. As a planning consultant, I rely on the formal consultation as my ingredient list for a successful application, as it identifies the required studies that need to accompany that application and to have it accepted as being complete. As a result, I can prepare a more exact project budget, and the review process is expedited as delays for last-minute studies are avoided. We all know what is required from the beginning. For these reasons, my colleagues and I at the IBI Group fully support the Planning Department's suggested amendments for formal consultation and complete applications.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Is there anyone in the, oh, well, first of all, I should ask if there's questions to staff from council members. Any questions? Councillor Geisens, please.
Well, I guess the question that I have, will this actually expedite everything, or is this going to be another, I guess, from some of our people saying that this is another delaying tactic, and it may not or may not be, but that's what I'm hearing. So is this actually going to speed things up? And can you give me some indication as to how this is going to change? Because you're still going to have to make an application, and it could still not be correct that staff will deal with it.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. As I started to mention in my presentation as well, the pre-consultation process has been something that, as a planning department, we have utilized since 2014 with success. It does allow open communication between planning, engineering, building, fire, EMS, Conservation Authority, if applicable, to talk with the proponent before a submission is made. This helps identify any of the studies or requirements that would be needed. It helps identify any of the issues before a submission comes in so that we can work to some common ground in terms of an application submission. It has reduced a number of the, once an application has been submitted, it has reduced the number of times for circulation. So we get once we get the first submission, the subsequent needs for review have been reduced since the pre-consultation process has been implemented. And when we do have applications that come through the pre-consultation process, we do have a good discussion in terms of some of the concepts that are proposed so that we can flag or iron out some of those items of concern before the application comes in, so that there's not that same delay in terms of back and forth, so that when the application does come in, we do have the information that's needed at hand. If it's a site plan, there has been tweaks to the site just in terms of if there's been some engineering works that have come up, or if, say, for a fire lane or an entrance, we can work with the proponent before the application is actually submitted, so that that is flagged as part of that preliminary discussion.
I hope it works. Thank you.
Any other questions from council members? Nothing at this time. Thank you. Is there anyone in attendance who wishes to speak in support of the amendment? Support. I'm sorry? I didn't see Mr. Rowe's hand. Did he put it up? Did you put your hand up, Mr. Rowe? No, you got to put it up. You can't. There, I saw your hand. You may come forward and speak in support. Are you going to speak in support or opposition? Okay. Is there anyone present who wishes to speak in opposition or in general to this matter? Surprise, Mr. Klein. Come on over, sir. Thank you.
Thank you, Your Worship. Through you to members of council, I'm here tonight representing some of my colleagues, specifically Keith Jones, who can't be here because of another commitment, David Rowe, who will be speaking later, Nathan Colominia, and Matthew Harms, in addition to myself. Let me say at the outset that I appreciate the opportunity that the planning staff gave us to provide input relative to this particular report. As been noted, certain changes have been made on what is being proposed, but in our view, the report does not go far enough to address our concerns. What are our concerns? Number one, is this official plan amendment needed? Or is it just imposing more red tape? B, how is this amendment going to increase the cost to our clients? And C, is this a situation being created whereby under the pretext of, quote, county requirements, staff is becoming the gatekeeper for planning applications coming forward to this council? We are of the view that we have no particular issue with pre-consultation relative to subdivisions, relative to site plans, relative to condominiums, relative to environmental protection issues, but insofar as regular official plan amendments, regular zoning amendments, applications coming before the Committee of Adjustment, basis of consent or minor variances, we don't really need to have a pre-consultation submission. Now, while it is noted that the manager of development can exempt certain applications, it's helpful, in my view, to review what process proponents have to go through, which are currently mandated. In the handout that I have provided, I have included the current prescribed regulations that are required by the province. You'll see that regulation that is set out, which are mandatory provisions proposed and required by the province. It includes a litany of requirements that the province requires, what a proponent has to comply with. In addition, in the handout that I have handed out, I have included additional requirements included in the current official plan. And if I can take you there now, it talks about the justification statements required in the current official plan. That's on page 3 of that handout that I gave you. Once again, included in that general policy is a litany of studies required to be completed by proponents on various planning applications. So under the regulations in place by the province, we have 27 mandatory requirements that must be complied with. In the current official plan, we have all the justification reports required under official plan amendments, including a planning rationale report for the proposed change prepared by the applicant. This shall include, but not be limited to, information regarding the proposed change, servicing density if applicable, floor areas if applicable, lot layout, site plans as appropriate and applicable, and the criteria outlined in section 9.6c of this plan. The county at its sole discretion may waive the requirements for planning rationale report for minor and other site-specific amendments. So the county's got its current policies in place dealing with the specific things now that the staff wants to put this further layer of requirements on proponents. Now, in the planning report, it talks about Bill 51 as if it's recent legislation. Bill 51 was passed in 2007, some 10 years ago. So in Norfolk County has been operating without any further impediments initiated by Bill 51 for the past 10 years. And the general rationale for Bill 51 was to address the issue of when you had a, quote, completed application. In the GTA area, Greater Toronto area, there was a considerable debate because huge developments were coming into play, and staff simply couldn't keep up with them. And there was a 60-day or 30-day or 90-day time frame in which these applications were mandated to be dealt with. So the concept came up where staff were indicating to developers, your application isn't complete. Your application isn't complete. It's missing this study, or it's missing that study. And the rationale for that was that the 60 or 90-day time frame didn't start to run. So the province came in and they passed Bill 51, and back in 2007, and the main thrust of that bill was to address this timing issue. Now, the first case that came up before the board dealing with this particular bill, and there's an application, or there's a provision in the legislation that says that if I, as a proponent, don't agree with a council decision on whether the application is complete, I have an appeal to the board on that very issue. So the legislation came in, and the arguments, it's quite interesting to follow the arguments that were advanced by the then City of Toronto, which parrot somewhat the arguments that I'm presenting to this council tonight. The developer put in his application and basically said the time starts to run now. Staff came back and they said, no, the time isn't starting to run because we require all these additional studies. A servicing report, housing issues report, community services and facilities study, Section 37 community benefits study, appropriate plans, drawings, and models. And it went on and on, all these studies that were required. So the proponent says, no, I don't have to provide those studies. It's not in the material. The solicitor for the City of Toronto said, oh, it's in the general requirements of the official plan. The same general requirements that are encompassed within our current official plans. So to cut to the chase, what the board indicated is that you can't rely on the particular things to have the clock start ticking unless they're set out in specifics in your official plan. The bottom line is the thrust of that legislation was to determine to the satisfaction of municipalities when an official plan or planning application was complete. It was never intended, in my view, to insist upon all these additional requirements being imposed at the staff level. Any proponent that comes before this council is well aware of the other stakeholders that they must deal with, whether it's the Conservation Authority, whether it's the Ministry of the Environment, whether it's the Ministry of Natural Resources. We accept that as a given. And we're not here unless those stakeholders have been consulted and their input has been secured. And for minor planning applications coming forward, we see no change required. As indicated, Mr. Arians, Mr. Valley, they're more up in the subdivisions, site plans, the more senior levels of planning applications. I understand that, but not for a simple official plan amendment, not for a simple zoning bylaw amendment, committee of adjustment application, when you've already set out your policies in your existing official plan document. Subject to any question, that concludes my comments.
Thank you very much, Mr. Klein. Questions? Councillor Oliver, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Mr. Klein. I do have a question for you, but before that, I don't know whether you've seen the staff report. I'm sure you have.
Yes.
Because you referenced to why would staff be suggesting this for simple OP amendments, zoning applications, or committee of adjustment? Right at the bottom of the first page, it says it should be noted that for committee of adjustment applications and minor zoning applications, no formal pre-consultation is required.
Yeah, but
and
that's,
yet you're referencing that. So they're not suggesting it for committee of